World War II is a very diverse topic, surrounded by many ideas and concepts which have made it a fascinating topic of study. Such fascinating concepts and ideas include propaganda, the main actor of the war, helping nations control and attack crowds of their own and foreign nations.
Propaganda, according to the dictionary, is information, ideas, or rumors that are widely spread by different media to help or harm a person or group. In the war, propaganda was made to promote their own military ideas so that they can win the war. Different military groups created their own military propaganda to make people join the army and the ideals that the people that join the army will fight for, and also do propaganda to protect the general citizens from bombing raids and different types of attacks from the enemy. For example, this poster which promotes complete darkness at night to protect themselves from bombing planes because the planes couldn't find them in the dark. Or this one that promotes Hitler's youth.
The war was unpredictable, and each nation needed its own people to support their efforts and help the war turn their way. For this reason, the government and army started to produce provocative, attractive, and sometimes fake propaganda to attract people and influence their positions. The main goal of propaganda was to rise up people's morale around the war and to inspire them into believing that their nation would win the war if society contributed with resources to their war effort. However, propaganda wasn't just made to rise up morale, but also to rise up conscience about information and how insecure people were, even in their own nations. This type of propaganda was issued to everyone to prevent any citizen from sharing or giving away any information to the enemy or even their most trusted friends. This seemed like a good idea and seemed to be useful for the nation. The main purpose was to communicate it to the people, as it was a harsh message for many not to trust anyone, and required key images or messages so people could be indoctrinated into this behavior. Many of the posters ended up being too aggressive for many, and for others very confusing, which ended up in many versions of this original message. At the end, propaganda played a key role on raising people's morale or regulating their behaviors, but nations found another way to use it, to attack enemies' morale. Enemies did this by sharing false information to other nations, to lower down morale or manipulate certain individuals, known as black propaganda. Such practices including broadcasting fake news inside different countries, such as Germany did inside Britain, distributing fake newspapers to lower down morale or disarray people with fake information, such as the US did inside Germany, or even distributing fake stamps to cause in people fear of what their leaders may be thinking, which was another practice made by the US inside Germany. At the end, propaganda played a key role on raising morale or attacking their enemies in a psychological way. Even though propaganda had a similar purpose around the world, to raise up morale and cause confusion to the enemy, nations had their own formulas and messages they wanted to give. Britain, for example, tried to make people understand that the war was going at their favor, but that supplies, materials, and several other resources were scarce due to the war efforts, and people need to ration food and donate extra materials to help with the war efforts. Propaganda also helped to create conscience over spies and how every citizen should be very careful with what they say and with who they have relations. America, on the other hand, was not into propaganda, but rather communicating the truth. However, due to the circumstances that were taking place, America decided to use it in media such as comics, posters, leaflets, movies, or even radio. American propaganda was much more positive and encouraged both adults and youths to take their place at the army and support their country war efforts. However, the Axis propaganda was much more different from the other one. Germans, for example, portrayed the Allies as terrorists, criminals of war, to encourage hate and fear against them in their own people. They also portrayed Hitler as a great leader with many of his victories and accomplishments in the war, and encouraged young ones to join his divisions and take their place in the army. Japan's propaganda was much more reduced and focused mainly on portraying America as their enemy and cherished to their people. It also remarked that their generals worked for their country. Lastly, Italian propaganda exemplified their glorious army and how the Axis had opened a path for them to take advantage over the Allies and win the war, exemplified in different cartoons where Italians kick out the Allies of their territories with the help of the Axis. At the end, propaganda had a primary objective, to raise up morale which was adopted and manipulated by the different powers and nations.
Propaganda during the war began as a way to inform people about dangers that foreign nations created towards them. This can be seen in some Nazi propaganda to inform their people of the boundaries and how to prevent them for the most part. Later on, propaganda started to enter military groups, promoting themselves as their own nation. Each army had their own type of propaganda, being by promoting themselves or by taking fame off the other nations. Also, variations of their own army were created, propaganda to promote those variations.